Hey boys and girls, guys and gals. So in this video, we're basically going to be discussing Sketchbook app and its user interface. This is kind of a part one. This one will just go through all the different tools, what they're about, what they do, basic terms, go through as quickly as you can. And then in the next video, we'll actually create a quick project to kind of test out hopefully the majority of these tools. So this video is really geared for anybody first learning Sketchbook app. My teacher friends who are going to be using this software or might be using this with their students, and any students of course who are using this software. So with this particular software from Autodesk, this is the what was once considered the free version, which you would download through like the Play Store or their App Store. At one point, Autodesk did have a Sketchbook Pro, which was a subscription based. You had to pay for it, but now it's all free. Okay, as of right now, there's still technically two different versions. This one, you lose a couple of different tools, a little bit of functionality, but and then on the other one, which is downloaded directly from Autodesk's website, that one you get the UI is just set up a little bit differently. You have just a couple of options that are additional. Hopefully they'll merge the two, but nothing on that yet. So let's go ahead and get this going, and let's talk about what these buttons do, and then that way y'all can practice. We can get to creating just a basic project using this stuff. So what's great with this software is it's user-friendly. The interface is it's pretty simple to understand compared to other softwares which are a little bit more complex. This one, it's pretty bare bones, and it's really geared towards digital painting, digital illustration. It's rasterized, it's not vector based or anything, but you get the true digital painting in kind of it really in its truest form. The brushes want to behave like they're traditional, what they're basically created after. They want to behave like true brushes or pencils and pens and all that, which is great. And so we're going to use this, we're going to learn it. Let's get going. So first things first, with this software, excuse me, we have this toolbar going across the top here. We have these tools on the left, and then right now we have our layers on the right. Okay, now I happen to be using a Wacom Cintiq 16 tablet. It's not touchscreen, so I don't have that functionality. I will say this app works best if you have a touchscreen that you can use. It's awesome to use with the touchscreen. The bad thing with this is if you don't have a touchscreen, it's a little difficult to kind of zoom in and zoom out. It's a little tricky to do that. So having the ability to kind of zoom in, rotate things is so much easier, and it works really well with touchscreen tablets. So hopefully you have one to use. Hopefully you have a stylus to use. If you don't have a stylus, that's okay. But if you don't have a stylus, you want to make sure that this button, this option right here, pen mode, is turned off. That way it knows that you are trying to basically finger paint on the screen without a stylus. It knows to pick up your pressure, or at least you using your finger to draw and paint. But if you are going to have a stylus, I recommend having that turned on pen mode. Okay. Another thing I want to throw out there, this version of the software does have a tendency to crash. At first, I'm going to be honest, it is a little annoying. It happens from time to time, and I think it's just when the app gets overloaded. If you're working on a lot of detail, big file, something happens, it just overwhelms itself, and so it shuts down. The great thing is that as soon as you click to reopen the software, it recovers really well. It'll say recovering, and it brings you right back where you were. And so that gives you the opportunity to then save. If anything, it gets you into the good habit of saving your work every few minutes, which is a great habit that you should have anyway when you're working digitally, because you would hate to lose hours and hours of work if your files were non-recoverable. So hate for that to happen. So it will happen from time to time. It does stay pretty solid at times. So it's just, that's the biggest thing that you'll have to kind of work around. But you do get used to it, and you just keep going, keep moving forward. All right, so we know this is where our pen mode. We click that to make sure, if we don't have a stylus, we turn that off. If we do have a stylus, turn that on. That way it knows to try to recognize any pressure sensitivity with that particular stylus. If it's just a basic stylus, it doesn't have a whole lot of pressure sensitivity to it, then it's still going to work, but it knows to try to basically calculate all that pressure, tilt, rotation of the stylus, so on and so forth. Right next to it, you have your UI toggle, and here, let me go ahead and turn these off for now. Here we have these options. This basically allows you to open up certain tool sets for your interface. Okay, so we'll start at the bottom with Layer Editor. And so with Layer Editor, here we have where we will work with our layers. Okay, we will go through and talk about our layers in just a moment. We have our Copic color palette, which you can turn on and can move about. Okay, so basically this is just a color palette that's based off of Copic markers. Okay, some people are all about Copics, and so there you go. They're preset. You can use these as you wish. Okay, and then we have our color editor, so that would be our color puck. Okay, so this now pops up, and this is basically our shortcut, our color puck. And then we have our brush editor, or our brush puck. Okay, so that'll pop up, and that's basically minimized at this point, right? And it's like a shortcut, right, for adjusting your color or your brushes. And then we have our brush library, right? And as you notice, this little icon, similar to this one over here. Okay, and so the brush library, you can turn that on, that pops up there. Okay, and this basically houses all of your brushes that you have downloaded in this software. Okay, and lastly, we have Sketchbook Extras. And so Sketchbook Extras is awesome because you click that, it's going to give you all these available brush sets that are here for you to download for free. They're pretty quick to download, but you have a lot of different brush sets already set up for you, and these are basically set up by a lot of pro illustrators and digital artists, and they've made these available to Sketchbook users, which is great. So you can go through them. There's all sorts of different sets, and you just click this little button and it'll download it right into your brush library. I think I have just about all of these, but those are awesome to go through. They're great to work with. Okay, all right, so we've got that, we went through there, and then you have this double arrow option, and that's just to toggle your full screen to hide basically your layout of interface. That way you can just see your artwork, see how it's going without any distractions, and then you can go back to it and keep working. Okay, all right, now let's move over here to this top menu bar up here. Okay, and so this first one here is our main menu. Okay, and so I click here, I'm gonna have some options. I've got new sketch, I've got open, basically opening an existing file that you've worked on, saving that file, saving a copy of that file, and exporting. Export if we need to save a JPEG, a still image of our work, or a PNG. Both are still image files. JPEG compresses a little bit. Okay, so it kind of shrinks it down just a little bit. PNG doesn't compress as much. Also, PNG allows you to save things with a transparent background. So if you've created something and you want to keep the background turned off, right? Turn that off. It allows you to save that with a transparent background. That way you can bring that image into another file and you won't have to worry about a background that you have to crop out. It's just the object that you created, which is awesome. All right, and of course preferences and help. So here on New Sketch, you can just simply click New Sketch, but it's going to default to whatever you have set here, or that the last thing you happen to use. So I recommend going here to this arrow and clicking, and you will have then your options for your dimensions, your width and your height. And so we're working in pixels. Pixels is basically, in this digital document, we have all these little dots of possible information that we can fill in. And so here, this is 1920 pixels wide and 972 pixels tall. Okay, and of course you can rotate, so that way it's either portrait or landscape. And then here you have some other options. Again, right over here you have some other options. So this one is set to your screen dimensions, and then you have these other options, 1080p, 720p, so on and so forth. I usually try to work in a high resolution, just so I can cram as much detail and basically coloring, line work, anything, just cram as much as possible. I like to work in usually high detailed drawings or paintings. And so you have these options here. Now I will say this, your files are going to be saved in what's called 72 dpi. So that's the resolution, okay? 72 dots per inch, or 72 ppi, pixels per inch. And so that means that per inch you have 72 little squares, little tiny squares that can be filled with information, right? 72 is usually what your photographs from your phone will come out in. That's usually great for like web work, if you're designing imagery or anything like that for an app or for a website, something like that. That way it doesn't cause any lagging when it loads because of how large these image files are. But if you're going to print something, usually you'd want to do it in a 300 dpi or ppi resolution, 300 at least, so that way it's pretty high quality. Unfortunately, with this particular version of the app, it doesn't give us that control to change that. I'm hoping that they update that and they fix that soon. That option is available in the Autodesk Pro version, which again is free, but that one you get directly from the Autodesk website. And again, what our school district gave us access to is this version, which was once considered the free version, that is, downloadable through the Play Store or the App Store. Okay, so there's that bit. We could take this into another app and adjust the resolution, but of course you'd have to have a different app and try to get that done. So for now, again, I try to work in a high resolution, just cram as much detail as I can into it, and hopefully it still looks pretty high quality, even though it's 72 dpi. All right, so just throwing that out there. So, normally I would just click create, and it would create my file according to what I chose. Okay, so I'll click cancel. All right, excuse me. So those are our options there on main menu. Over here we have our back button, or our undo. Shortcut for that is Control Z. Okay, and then we have our redo option over here. So if I happen to draw something there, hit the back button, right? Or I can do redo, which is Control Y, and that will come back. Okay. All right. Next to those, the undo and the redo, we have our select or selection tool. Okay. So if you click here, you have a couple of options that pop up now. Here we have our lasso tool. Okay, so if we had something, again, let's say that was a fantastic drawing, and I wanted to select a portion of it, maybe all of it. I'm going to choose my lasso tool, and I'm just going to freehand. And basically, I have to finish the loop to complete the selection. And so I can select that. What I can do with this is, say I wanted to paint inside of this shape, I then click on my brush again, make sure that's highlighted, and now I can paint inside this shape. It's created a boundary, and now I can paint inside of this. Okay. All right. We'll go back to select. So this option right now, replace, is selected, is chosen. Okay, so what that means is, let's say I made a selection, and then I made a second selection. That second selection will then replace the first selection. Okay, so the second try will replace the first try. I can choose this add option to make an addition to my selection. So if I click that, it's going to keep what I selected plus add on to that selection. Okay, and basically make it bigger. And vice versa, if I click remove over here, I can remove some of that selection. Okay, that's how that works. Now, again, I can paint inside of this, and again, if you're going to paint, make sure you click back on your brush over here, using this felt tip pen for now. Click back on it until it's highlighted, and I can paint inside of this. Okay. Now, if I wanted to paint outside this shape, what you would do is you would go to your selection options or your selection tool. You would go to this option right here, which is invert, and that's basically going to select the outside. Right now, it's selected the inside of that boundary. If I click invert, it's going to select the outside, and you can tell that it's selected the outside because not only does this part have these little marching ants, these dotted lines, but notice that the outside edge of your canvas, right, your canvas has it as well. So now that means that, I forgot to click back over here, that I can paint on the outside and not affect the inside. Okay, so that's how that works. Go back here, and then of course you can deselect using this option right here, and that'll just cancel all selections that have been made. Okay. You have your rectangle selection tool. Okay, and so that just basically creates rectangular selections. Right now I have it on remove, so it's not trying to get anything, but if I go back to replace, you can see it there. Okay, and again, if you want to add to that selection, you click on the add option, you increase your area of selection. Okay, and then again, remove, click on remove right here, and then that allows you to remove some of that selected area. Okay, and again, I can take that and I can paint inside that shape. Okay, like so. All right, and deselect. Okay, now this third one right here, this is the magic wand. So here, this basically, when you use this, you can click on an area and it's going to read the pixels that are there. It's going to read your artwork, and it's going to try to pick up as many pixels as it can depending on this tolerance level right here. Okay, so right now it's set at 32. So let me just for funsies knock this down to, we'll go with 4. So if I click here, I'm on minus, go to replace, and if you can see that only a very small portion of this work is being selected, especially on this blue part, because the blue part, there's some parts that are a little opaque and some parts that aren't filled in very well. It's very blotchy, right? But if I click on the orange, it's going to get a good chunk of it, right? Now I can change what that does by dragging the slider over, and so if I crank it up to 255 and I click in this blue area, it's going to get pretty much all of it, right? It's going to get just about all of it. And again, if I click over here, you see how it grabs so much of the work. So that's how that works. Here, you can either sample one layer or you can sample all layers. So this just allows you to grab any information that's there, kind of depending on, you know, if I've got more layers here with more information, I can click that, it'll allow me to grab more information regardless of what layer it's on. Okay. Okay. So, all right, that is that for the selection tool. Okay, so let's move forward with the transform tool, which is this option right here. Click that. And so now we have these options here. This first one, which is our distort. This one, you click there, it's going to give you this bounding box, right, with these almost like very large vertices or points on the corners and midpoints, right, and then one in the center, which is like our anchor point, basically. And so if I take that anchor point and I drag it over, it's gonna then kind of distort that, right, according to where I put it. So that's cool, it's handy. And of course I can drag this one down, can grab this corner one, bring it in like this. Suddenly that puts it at an angle and creates this perspective look, right? And again, I can grab this, go this way. So this can make for some very cool effects with the work. Okay, and then of course, if you're good with your changes, you click the check mark, right? You want to click the check mark. If you are not good with your changes, you'll click cancel. Okay. All right. So let's see. Okay, so for now we'll cancel. Go back to that option. Okay. All right. And so now I can go here to the nudge tool, and this one really works great if you've got touchscreen. So for me, since I don't have touchscreen at the moment, I'm a little limited in kind of what it does. Excuse me. So I can take this, click in the center, and I can drag it, you know, and move it about. Or I can just kind of nudge it a little bit at a time by clicking these, okay? But what's really cool if you got touchscreen is you can put your two fingers on the screen, you can pinch and zoom to resize, drag it, right? Drag your fingers across the screen to move it. And you can also rotate, which again comes in handy. You just kind of rotate it around with your fingers, which is cool. And that also comes in handy. So let's cancel that. If you have touchscreen, you can zoom in, right, to work on some detailed work. You can zoom in. You can rotate the canvas by rotating your fingers. That way, if you've got to draw a particular line or an edge, it makes it a lot easier for you to naturally draw that edge, paint that in without having to, you know, put your arm in some uncomfortable position. So it's kind of like rotating your drawing paper on the table if you have to draw a particular line or curve or something in a certain direction. Okay. All right. Now, let's see. So go back to transform. Okay. And you also have these options here where you can flip horizontally. So it's basically going to mirror that horizontally. Or you can mirror it or flip it vertically. Okay. And then of course you can rotate counterclockwise or you can rotate clockwise. Okay. All right. So cancel that. Okay. Next, I'm going to create a new layer here real quick. Again, I'll talk about layers in just a moment. We have our fill, right, which looks like a little paint bucket. So if I click on that, this one is basically our solid fill. So if I wanted to Let's go with that lime green. If I wanted to basically just fill this completely, I'll click on the screen and there you go. You filled the whole canvas. Okay. There's no edges that it has to concern itself with because it's a brand new layer. It's totally empty. And so it's just going to fill the whole thing. Okay. So let me undo. I can, if I do this option right here, toggle sample all layers, that's going to have a different effect because now it's considering all information that's on your canvas, and so it's going to fill up to the edges that it detects, right? So it didn't go everywhere. It stopped where it saw pixels of information already being filled up. Okay, and of course I can go ahead and click on the orange and it's going to fill that in, right? So that's how that works. So let's see, I can go here to our linear fill, which will create a gradient. So well, for now we'll just go here. So I click and I drag, right? You can drag in whatever direction you want. Okay, so I'll just click here. And so I can grab these and kind of move them to change the gradient, right? I can click inside the circles and then go over to my color puck, click in there, change this to a new color, click the center one, change that to another color, and then lastly, over here. Okay. You can also click along that line to add another color. So I can then take that and let's throw in some yellow, I guess, right there. Okay. And of course you can kind of drag them away. Okay. So I just drag it down the line and get rid of that. Okay. Again, you can just rotate it, expand it, stretch it. Okay. And then you can also do this option right here, which is reverse. This will just kind of flip your colors. Okay. So for now I'll cancel, or you can OK it if you're good with it. Okay. Let's try that option again, but with radial. So radial fill is just basically gradients, but in circular motion. So if I click and drag, right, depending on how much I drag, it's going to create those different layers, that circle, right, that radial fill. And again, same thing, I can click on these circles and kind of drag them out, right, rotate, whatever I need to, click on them, change the colors. And of course I can flip it. That way it just flip-flops the colors. Okay. All right. Cancel that. So that is that. Color adjustment. Go right here to this option and click there. So let me click on the other layer with the orange and blue. And so if I click here, it's going to bring me these two options. This first one is HSL, which is our hue, our saturation, and our light. So hue, so let's say you have something colored in and you want to quickly adjust the colors. One way to do it is you can go into this option and then you just drag the slider over and it's going to change that color combination that it sees. Okay, so you can quickly go through some different combos of color. Okay, I can increase my saturation or I can decrease my saturation. That way it looks more grayed out, more faded. And then of course I can increase my light or my darks, right? So change the values there. All right. Option next to that is this one right here, our color balance. Okay. And so there you can go up here and at the top you have this little drop down that is for shadows, midtones, and highlights. And you can go through these and adjust your shadows to either be more on the cool side, cyan, or more towards the warm side with reds, right? And magenta, so warm, or cool to green, again warm to yellow, or cool to blue. And again, you can just go through that to adjust your colors as you see fit. All right, and almost done, halfway through this toolbar. And then we have our guides, which is basically like our rulers. Again, if you have touchscreen, this will work great for you. Reason why is because if you have touchscreen, you can take your two fingers and you place them on top of that ruler that you see there, and you can basically rotate. You can rotate the ruler, you can move it up and down. It's just so much easier to use. Here, the only thing I'm allowed to do is basically drag it up and down. And so really I'm only allowed to do horizontal lines at this point. And so with your tool, just run it across that edge. And so you just create your line work, right? I did find a workaround for this if you don't have touchscreen. So that is that. And again, if you double click on it, it'll reset itself to its original position. Okay, so you can do that. Here we have our curve ruler, which is nice, and this is the workaround. So again, touchscreen, you'll be able to manipulate this using your fingers or stylus. But here, what you do is, let me change to another color. Let's go here. So I can click on these points and I can drag this, and this is great for creating really nice curves that we don't have to do it by hand and kind of fix it, erase it, do it again. You can use this. And so this basically decreases or increases the size. This little option over here. You have this option, which is basically rotate. So I can take that and just kind of swing this around. Okay. And then you have this option, which is basically to flip it, like a mirror image. Okay. Again, you just click these and you drag and you adjust your curve, and then you just simply draw your curve however you need to. Okay. Just like that. The workaround, so with the straight edge ruler, I was only able to do horizontal lines. With this one, I can do diagonal. If I just basically set it up just right, you'll see it kind of snap into place. And once it's snapped, I know I'm pretty much ready to go. And I can drag this over to more of a vertical line. Takes a little bit more nudging, but this was one workaround, and actually I have another workaround as well coming up. But you can see this is just, you can quickly use this, create some good curves, some diagonal, straight edges, so on and so forth, right? And then lastly, we have this option, which is basically an ellipse. And again, great with touchscreen, but you drag this anchor and this can increase, decrease the size, you rotate it. Here, this allows you to, increase or decrease the size of the ellipse. Okay, and again, this will allow you to just follow along those edges. Okay, create some really nice curves with that. Drag it over, create those curves. Okay, all right, click off. Okay, so I'm going to shut that one off. We'll talk about those functions right now. And then next tool is our perspective guide. So here's another workaround, which is awesome. Excuse me. So here, if you're teaching 1-point perspective or learning it, so this is set up for you. Here we have 1-point perspective, 1-point mode. I can grab this vanishing point and I can just kind of move it about, right? Change my horizon line, right? Put it low, put it much higher, right? So you can do that. I can also grab this and I can rotate my horizon, give me more of an action shot. Right? Okay, so you can do that. You can you can constrain. So you can basically set up your bounding box, right? It's like a viewfinder. You can set that up so you're more constrained to only this area, or you click this option and then you can put it back to infinite. So let's do black lines, and let me do. So vertical lines are vertical, but anything other than that is going to follow, and of course horizontals are horizontals, right? But it's going to follow to the vanishing point perfectly. Okay, so that's great for learning or teaching perspective, right? So kids can work on their 1-point perspective a lot more accurately, right? And so I'm gonna clear that. Same thing, 2-point perspective. So you have your 2 vanishing points in your horizon line. I can create the bounding box, right, which kind of limits me, or I can make it infinite. Okay, so let's do a box and 2-point. Verticals are vertical. Right there we have those going to that vanishing point, vertical. Going to second vanishing point, vertical. So it makes it a lot easier, right? Makes for very quick work. Messed up right there. No worries. Okay. And then of course you have 3-point perspective, same thing. Okay. Oops. Okay. All right. And of course you can create your own custom grid. Okay. Which you can also do, and this is comes in handy. So here you can snap or unsnap, which basically means that it's more free-handed, right? So I usually keep snap on, just so that way it's accurate. You can also lock your perspective guides, so that way, see those dots went away, the vanishing points that went away. If you keep it unlocked, you might accidentally, as you're trying to draw, grab the vanishing point and you end up moving it, which pretty much throws everything off. So I'd recommend just having them, or you, locking that way you don't have to worry about that, and you can work close to your vanishing points and not have to worry about messing that up. And of course you can turn off your guides just so you can see your drawing, see how it's looking, or you can turn that back on so you can view it. Okay. All right, so that's that. Next one is symmetry. Okay, this one's great, especially for for working on certain designs or certain type of project. This is really helpful. It helped out some of my kids who are new to this, new to digital, new to drawing on a tablet. So we use symmetry to make their job a little easier. So you can grab this anchor point. You can drag this all over the place, move it up or down. But this becomes your center line, and so let's see. So now I can just freely draw, and there you go. I have my center line doing, basically the software is doing half of the work for me. I'm only working on one half. Right, so there's a little interesting character. Okay. Right there. Excuse me. And so again, you can also do Symmetry X. So the first one is Symmetry Y. On the x-axis, same thing, right? So here it's mirroring. I have both turned on, so it's mirroring both. Okay. Can turn one off, and that way I'm just working. Yeah. All right. And let's clear that. turn that one off. And then of course this one is your radial symmetry, and so yeah, sure that'll come in handy. So quick symmetrical radial design. Now I can take my paint bucket or my fill tool and just pick some lime green, and I'm just gonna start randomly finding some shapes. It's for quick work for the kids, especially if they're just learning this kind of work, digital, this software, getting used to a tablet, so on and so forth. Okay. Let's see. So symmetry. What's that one? Let's turn that off. Okay. So extend, stop strokes at center. Basically, this kind of makes it for short, choppy strokes, right? Versus just kind of a free-for-all. Okay. Of course, you can lock it, just like your perspective guides. You can hide it so you can see the design, turn it back on. Okay. And here, this just basically dictates how much you are subdividing this design. Okay. With that slider bar. Excuse me. All right. The next one. Oh, this next one is awesome because it makes you look like a rock star. So what I mean by that is, let's see. So sometimes when we draw, we have this natural kind of wiggle and wave in our line work. It happens. This option, right, our stroke stabilizer, looks like this little S, is meant to eliminate some of that wave. Okay, so if I then turn that on, if you look, you should be able to see that it is slightly nudging the line to where it looks a little bit more smooth than if you were doing it naturally. So it will create some nice smooth line work for you, so there's not too much wave and wiggle. Okay, so that's awesome. Makes you look like you have a super steady hand for a nice clean line work. Okay, all right. Let's see. And then we have our like our shape tools. Okay, so here I can use line. I just click and drag, create some quick line work, and it all depends on the size of your brush, the color that you have chosen, the type of brush that you have. You can use this circle tool or ellipse, square. Right, make for some quick abstract work. Again, grab the paint bucket, grab some wild colors, and just start to fill those in. So this would probably be awesome for middle school, elementary, you know, if you're teaching certain design, abstract, symmetrical, asymmetrical, balance, visual weight, so on and so forth. Space, shape. Okay. And then pretty much lastly, these right here, this option right here, this is to insert an image. So you would click that, it'll take you to your files where you can bring in a photograph, a texture, another drawing that you've created, and it inserts it into the file here. And that's great for if you want to insert a drawing to use as reference. You can do a paint over it, embellish it, add to it. You can use the photos as textures. Plenty to be done there. And then of course you have your text tool. You know, it's limited. It's not like Photoshop or anything else, but it still can do plenty. But basically it gives you the option to, you know, type in what you want to say and change the colors here. Let's do making this lime green, and of course you choose your font depending on what you have installed on your computer or with other software. Okay, color, you can distort it. Okay, you can nudge that, move it over, okay, flip it, right? I can rotate it counterclockwise or clockwise. Okay. Excuse me. All right, so there's that option. And all right, so that's pretty much it for that. Let's move on to the layers. So over here on your right, we have our layer editor, right? So at the top, you have this plus sign, which is to add layer. Okay. In the center, you have clear, which will basically just, so let's say I have this one turned on, I click that, it just deletes it completely. Okay, or not, it doesn't delete the layer, it just clears it out. It empties out whatever's in there. Okay. Here on these three horizontal lines, you have your layer menu. And so click that, it's going to give you add layer, clear, duplicate, copy, cut, paste, lock, merge all layers, merge visible layers, rename layers. Okay. Right here where it says normal, these are blending, what's it called? Blending modes. And so these will do something different depending on what you have. Each one will do something slightly different. So let's take the word hello, and right now it's on normal. I'm gonna change that to darken. So now it looks like that. Multiply is just about the same in this particular case. Color burn is different. So it causes the image to interact with the rest of the work differently. Okay. And usually for this to work, the blending mode layer needs to be usually on top of something else in order for this to be effective. Okay. So again, each one will do something slightly different. It really is trial and error. You kind of just go through them, and depending on the look you're going for, you know, you either know what will do what after you've used these so many times, or you just kind of go through and cycle through them and see which one gives you the best option according to what your design is, right? Okay. Moving on to the layer. So now I have that layer on luminosity. See how it actually layered that layer luminosity, so I'm aware. In the center, I have these little dots here. If I hold down, now I have these shortcuts that I can go through. Okay, so I have my add layer shortcut. I can delete layer. I can rename the layer. I can merge with everything. I can merge with what's below. I can lock the layer. I can hide the layer, and I can duplicate the layer. Okay. Locking just basically means that it will lock it. I can't make any edits to it, and that's great if you just really don't want to touch a particular layer and mess it up, and you're working on another layer. You can do that. You can hide it, you know, for now. So if you don't like the option, you don't want to delete it necessarily, you just want to hide it for now, you just turn it off and still keep it there. And of course, you can duplicate the layer. I like to do that when I want to make a change to it, but I don't want to mess up my original. I'll duplicate it and work off the copy, and then go from there. Okay. This slider, this vertical slider here, this changes your opacity. So if I drag down, suddenly this becomes more and more transparent, right? Or it's opaque if it's at 100. Okay. The eye basically shows or hides the image. Okay. And then here, lock and unlock transparency, that little lock right there, that's awesome. I like using that. So let's say I'm gonna put this back on, I'm gonna put it on multiply. And if I wanted to paint inside the word hello, let's say I wanted to paint it this kind of teal color. And if I don't have that locked, I'm gonna have to be super careful about painting inside the edges, right? And painting inside the lines. Oops, I messed up, went outside the lines. right? You have to be super careful, steady hand, take you a while. If I lock this over here on the layer, I've locked that little lock, that should allow me to freely paint inside the layer quickly and efficiently and not have to worry about going outside the lines. See how that's being very clean? Painting that super clean. It's even painting or not filling in the texture that's in that particular font. So I really like that option. I use it a lot in both this software and other softwares just to make quick changes and add within the image. Okay. So that's how that works. Now, if you want to reorganize your layer, you simply drag on the outside edges, click it, hold it down, and just drag it wherever you need to. Okay, and so this reorganizes the image. This makes a difference depending on what your design is supposed to look like. You have to reorganize your layers so that you have certain things on top of other things, right? So notice how hello is now showing up depending on whether it's above or below the geometric shapes. Okay. Again, background, I can turn that off. Let's say I wanted to save this as a PNG so that way I could bring it into something else later, but I don't want the background there. I'm going to turn that off, save this as a PNG. It'll just save the actual artwork, not the background, and there you go. Okay. All right. So that is layers, and of course you can kind of resize this so you can show more, okay, depending on your preference. All right, almost done. Okay, so over here we have our color puck, we have our brush puck, okay? And so these are shortcuts, these are great. If you're using a stylus, or even if you're just, finger painting or drawing, you can click inside of these, and so I have this teal color. If I click inside and drag up, I'm going to lighten that teal, so I'm increasing its luminance, right? Or if I drag down, I'm then going to decrease that luminance, and I'm going to darken it, right? So drastically changing that value by dragging up or down. If I drag from left to right, I'm going to either desaturate or I'm going to saturate, okay? Over here on, sticking with the color puck, I can click on these three lines. That'll open that up fully. Okay, so you have different values of gray, you have your color wheel, okay, you can choose your colors there. If you're color picking on the go, so you can click here. What I do is I'll click inside. You can choose your color from the color wheel. You can click this little dropper, and then let's say I wanted to pick this orange. I click on that orange, it has now picked that orange for me. Alt on your keyboard is the shortcut for that. So let's say I wanted to go back to that teal. I'll go over here to my teal. I'm gonna click on Alt on my keyboard, click on that teal, and now it's chosen that. And if you notice, you can even pick different gradients, different values of those colors, right? You see how it's magnified it. Okay, so you can be very specific. Okay, going to brush. This basically opens up your brush properties. Here you can change what your brushes do. You can keep it basic, so you change your size, your opacity. There's shortcuts for that. Or you can go into Advanced tab, and here you can alter what it does. So let's say, let me go into my brush library. Let's see what this paintbrush will do. So I think I picked the wrong one. Oh, because that's on multiply and that's on lock, that's why. Okay. So let's say I go in here, and size with heavy pressure, it's all the way to 20, but if I keep really light pressure, it's going to taper that line. So notice how now it gives you a preview of what that line is going to look like. Notice how it's changed it. There it's fully thick all the way through. Here it's very tapered. So if I keep my pressure light, get a nice thin line. If I push down, it's going to give me a thicker line. Now, unfortunately, these options don't pick up, I don't think, at all when you're finger painting. There might be some workarounds. I believe you can, if you just kind of mess with the settings on particular brushes only. There's ways to do it, and there's still ways to create some cool work, even if you're just finger painting. Okay. But those are some options. You can alter by going in here, right? Clicking there, or you can just double click on your particular brush. That'll open up those properties, and again, you just go through and mess with all these options here. You can add textures, you can add a specific shape, you can make the brush very soft edged, which makes it blurry, or you can increase the hardness so that way it's a tighter edge, right? Harder edge. Right now it's listed as a marker up in here. I can take that and I can change it to a different style of brush. I can also, instead of it being standard, I can put it on multiply mode, and that is going to do something different to where it kind of overlays it. Okay, versus if I do, let's say color dodge, it's going to do that now. So all those are like blending modes, just like the layers, you know, we talked about earlier. Okay, so you can again change that to just about all your tools. Okay, you can rename them, you can create new brushes, so many options. Okay, so here on the brush puck, if I drag down, I'm decreasing the flow, meaning how much paint is coming out at one time. So only a little bit at a time, 36%, or I can just keep it at 100. If I drag left to right, I can say I go with this brush. I can increase the size of my brush by dragging to the right, or I can decrease by dragging to the left. Okay. Okay, so that's about it there. Going into my brush library, here you can find specific brushes that you really love, that you use a lot. So let's say this one, I think I use, I forget what it is. Let's just say this one, camo. I'll hold it down. I'm gonna drag it over here and drop it in as one of my favorites that I use a lot. Okay, and you can just kind of scroll through these. Okay, as you save them, they're right there for you at the ready. And so you can go through these. These are all your brushes that you have saved. You can click and hold on that set and kind of drag it over. So you see this light gray bar going across where the name is. Hold it down and drag it and to reorganize it. You can rename these. Over here you have this option that comes up, this little circle of dots. Hold that down. You can copy brushes, you can make a new brush, new folders, you can pin those brushes because it's that palette of brush because it's your favorite and you always use that set. Export the brush set, import, delete the brush, you know, copy the brush. Okay. All right. And just about all of them you can alter. The erasers, you can alter them a little bit, but yeah. Oh, and the other thing is some brushes are not available on the mobile app version. You'll lose some brushes. Okay, so just FYI. All right. I think that's about it. I went through just about all the tools. Went through the majority of the basics, I think. So hopefully that helps. I strongly believe in just kind of trial and error and really using the software as much as you can and trying to break it. Do anything you can with it and see what it will do and will not do, to basically find out its limits. So One last thing I wanted to mention, this is also works with Photoshop. So if you want to do cross-platform projects, you can save and export PSD files, so Photoshop files, so that way it holds all your layers. The TIFF files that it does save all the layers. So that's awesome if you wanted to, work with on another platform, another software. You can kind of use it back and forth because each software has their benefits, right? It has their strengths and weaknesses, so that's an option as well. All right, that's pretty much it. Other than that, go through all the tools, go through all the different brushes, make some cool designs, and on part 2, we'll actually create a basic project just so we can kind of see everything in action and see how well it does. All right, thanks so much. See you on the next one.
If you want more videos like this,
smash that like button and subscribe.